Rose of Sharon is still looking beautiful. And this is the one that I had tree formed. As you can see here. I still have it staked because we do get some strong winds with our storm. So, but it's been doing really good. And you can tree form them about as tall as you want. I could have tree formed it probably a little shorter than that, but I thought I might underplant it with some kind of shrub. But it's still looking beautiful. The Midnight Marvel hibiscus is still looking beautiful. As you can see, those huge dinner plate blooms. How large it is compared to my hand. So glorious. And still a lot more buds on here. So it will still be blooming for a while. And then here is the little quickfire. This is just a young plant. I planted it last season, so it went through one winter. And all my plants I start with are little bitty, so usually quartz. So you know, it's still getting established, but it's cute. It's been really hot here, and this gets direct west lighting, which is usually hot afternoon sun. So, you know, some of the blooms are kind of turning brown, which is unfortunate. Here is another Midnight Marvel hibiscus that I've shown in several of my videos. It's way too large for this area. It just sort of dominates. You can't see anything behind it. But just to give you an example, this one gets mostly full sun all day, but this one stalk here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2 more right behind those starting. It's a beautiful red, large plant, dark foliage. The coast-to-coast hostas are looking beautiful. They're getting morning sun, but they get mostly afternoon shade. But you can see how bright they are in this spot underneath this Japanese maple. There's a planting of 3 here, but it's hard to see. The third one is back here. It's being suffocated by this rose and this hibiscus. The crepe myrtles are really in their full glory right now. This is the Colorama Scarlet Red, and it has a beautiful perfumey scent. It's not really a fruity scent, it's more of an actual perfume type scent, but it's beautiful. But we had a pretty hard rain, and it just really blew it, and it's really kind of leaning this direction. I'm a little bit worried about it. The wind was so bad it actually blew down my third one. I have a planting of 3 here, and as you can see, this third one, there's only half of it left. The whole left side was broken down at the bottom. And so I have ropes. I have ropes holding it up for now. The ground was so saturated, I was afraid. But you can see where it broke. My hope is that around July 4th, I would have my bobos blooming white, and these would have been blooming red, which they were. But my bobos are behind. I do have some These are the Bobo Hydrangeas by Proven Winners. But it didn't work exactly how I had hoped. So what I'm thinking is I need an earlier blooming hydrangea. A quick fire, perhaps. Maybe another little quick fire. Like I showed you in the back of the house there. Perhaps that would bloom white earlier and do a little bit better, because this is morning sun that these plants get. These are on the east side. But the crepe myrtles are just beautiful. Of course, I know that people that live up north, unfortunately, cannot grow these. It's more of a southern thing. I think these are cold-hardy down to zone 6. And we are now at zone 7A. Here's another Bobo hydrangea, and it bloomed a little bit earlier. I'm not sure why, what made this one different, but it has really put out a nice little display here. But this is also a Bobo, and then I've got a Bobo here behind it. And another hibiscus here, which is the Holy Grail. I know it looks a lot like the Midnight Marvel, but it's actually the Holy Grail hibiscus. I can't tell any difference really between the two. They look identical to me, even the leaf color, the stature, size, habit forming. Everything about it to me is exactly like the Midnight Marvel. I think you could plant them side by side and not tell the difference. One of my favorite things blooming in the garden right now is this darling Rose of Sharon. I wish I could get to where my shadow is not in the way. Let's see if I can move over. This is the sugar tip Rose of Sharon. They call it sugar tip because it's variegated. All the leaves are variegated. But I love it too because of this beautiful sweet pink. It's a double bloom, and deep inside, if I can find one, it's got a deep wine color inside the bloom. It's very hard to see. Here's one, the older spent one, but you can see the wine color. But I've also tree formed this one. You can see the stalk. And they're very easy to tree form. I do have it supported with these little wire stakes. But, and it's been here for, I started tree forming it while it was still in the pot, but then I put it out here in the flower bed. I guess it's been about 2.5 years. But we had a horrible wind, and these stakes didn't, were sufficient to keep this from blowing over. So it's just one of my favorites. I love it. And the green color that's in the leaves is a very pretty sage, soft green color. So it's pretty cool, and I think it looks really pretty up against all these daisies. So July apparently is the month for daisies, and for your hibiscus, your hardy big dinner plate hibiscus, and for your Rose of Sharon. But like in past videos, I've shown the oh so easy roses never stop blooming. So this whole thing here is the oh so easy red roses, and I've never seen them stop since when they started in the spring. So they are Amazing roses. I still have some coneflower that you can barely see down here. Totally being suffocated by this Shasta daisy here. Walking around to the other side of the flower bed, I was going to show you the other coneflower that are still looking pretty. The blooms are older, and some of the really older ones are starting to look very tired. This is probably the oldest one here, and this one. But I still think they look neat. But you can see how vibrant the coloring is on the not so old ones. But this is the double scoop cranberry. This is the double scoop cranberry coneflower, and there's those right there that I showed you a second ago that were being suffocated by the Shasta daisies, which I need to probably next spring, I'm guessing, possibly this fall. I need to dig that big giant 4-foot clump up and divide it and move it to the back of the bed. It's just has suffocated my white wands veronica down in there. A coneflower, it's just encroaching upon everything. So it's gonna have to be moved, but it's very vigorous. I still have some blooming of my phlox, but something to note is this double play doozy Spirea. So it bloomed beautifully this spring, and the new leaves when they emerge are spectacular. Here's just a kind of a glimpse. Now I should have pruned this back when it was done with its first flush, and then you would have seen tons of this new growth, and you would have seen a much cleaner looking second flush, because you can still see the aged blooms that I should have cut off. But see, it's sending out another display of beautiful magenta pink flowers there. Here's some over here. My Jump for Joy rose is blooming again, which is this one here. So this is its second go around. The Serendipity allium is looking beautiful. It's loved by pollinators. I have this one, and then I have this one. That is the David tall garden phlox there. My poor At Last rose, if I can get back there to it, it's trying to put out more blooms, but it's completely overshadowed by this Baptisia and this Shasta daisies, but you can kind of see where it's trying. Now, I just planted that At Last rose, so, you know, it's little, which is part of the problem. But again, if I move these Shasta daisies someplace towards the back, they will make a pretty backdrop without suffocating all these other plants. And more of the David phlox. The Once in a Melon coneflower is still, I think, looking pretty. I think I said once in a melon. That's one in a melon coneflower. There's some more of the tall garden phlox. There's a firelight tidbit that I want to show you because it could be another option. It bloomed kind of early too, so if you want one that blooms a little more early, this one is the firelight tidbit, and it's already starting to put on some pink tips on the blooms. I'll show you. I really like the size of this. It's only about, maybe 2 feet tall. It's probably closer to just 20 inches tall. So it fits in really nicely at the front of a flower bed. I also planted, this is not something that blooms, but it is the candy corn spirea that I planted, I guess it was probably in May of this year, just a couple months ago. And it was a really tiny little pot, but I want you to look at this. This is the candy corn spirea, and it has looked like this since the beginning. Now, it will have blooms on it. I think pink ones in the spring, but that's not why I bought this plant. I bought this plant strictly for that color that you see on the leaves. It's got some rain on it right now, so that's why it's got little droplets of water. But don't you just love that? I mean, wow. When I put it in the ground for the first month, it just sat there. I kept it watered, and it's starting to really put on some new growth, but it took a little bit. Balloon flowers that I planted from seed, started from seed, are still blooming. The Russian sage, this is the crazy blue Russian sage, which the pollinators love. So this is the north side of my greenhouse, and I planted some annuals. Not very many, but that's the proven winners, the Supertunia bubblegum, snowdrift, bubblegum, snowdrift, bubblegum. And they're looking beautiful. They've been beat down with quite a bit of rain here lately, but they're still looking really pretty. The clematis, once I cut it back, this is the Little Mermaid. It just went bananas and continuously produces these darling blooms. Kind of a corally pink. I planted these last year, so they've been here. This is their now second season, but they were spindly little things that just really, the first year, I wasn't even sure if they were going to survive. But this year, they have just really done well, and I'm sure by their third year they'll be even better. The Tutti Frutti pink grapefruit yarrow is looking still beautiful. I mean, even the aged flowers I think are pretty. That's the old one, and these are the more recent ones. It's almost got 3 different shades of color in there, but it's beautiful. The dahlias are still being beautiful. Continuously putting on buds. This one is the Fire Fab, I think. Yeah. This is an awesome hydrangea. I just planted this last fall. So it went through the winter, and it came out looking so healthy, so strong, and it is just beautiful bloom panicles. Look how huge on this little bitty plant. This is a very young plant, and look, it's already putting out pink. It's beautiful. As you can see, the tall phlox is still blooming, and obviously butterflies love it. This is some more yarrow. This is called apple blossom, and it's a kind of a rich magenta color. Now, I'm not so sure this is actually apple blossom, but this is what I ordered, and this is what I got. But this looks nothing like an apple blossom. So perhaps this was mislabeled at the nursery when they sent it to me. I love it, but just be aware that it may or may not actually be apple blossom. Why they would name this apple blossom, I don't know. But I think it looks really pretty with my zinnias that I planted here. And here's another dahlia, very short one. Here's some more zinnias that I planted. I started these from seed. And behind them you can see my drift rose. This is the apricot drift. Beautiful little drift rose that really never stops blooming. It lulled just a little bit after its first flush and after the big flush in May, but then it just never stops after that. This is some more dahlia. All the dahlia came from the same, basically the same seed, and it was supposed to be a pink labyrinth, but again, seeds are not true to their parent plant, so because of cross-pollination and things, so I don't really care, but I think if you plant any dahlia from seed, it's going to be a guessing game as to what you end up with, but I still think it's a beautiful flower. My Queen of Sweden rose, which I just planted this spring. It was just a little bitty plant, bare root from David Austin. Sweetest little blooms ever. Sorry, the wind's blowing her. Can't hardly focus on it. Isn't that lovely? Oh, I'm in love with this rose. I hope it proves to be reliable and disease resistant. Of course, my bubblegum petunias in the containers, they have been through multiple windy storms and been blown all over the place, but they continue to look beautiful. There's this one here, and then I've got a matching one right there. And there's some more of the drift apricot roses. These are some geraniums that I started from seed. These are the, I think these are the apple blossom. Let me see if I can find the tag. These are the Maverick apple blossom geraniums that I started from seed. They got just beat with tons of rain yesterday and the day before, so they're looking kind of pitiful, but you can get a general idea of how sweet the little blooms are. Just a very blush, light pink. So pretty. There's the other container of the Supertunia bubble gum. Okay, so I saved this part of the video for last because I know many of the seasoned gardeners out there that might be watching aren't really thrilled about daylilies. In particular, maybe not really thrilled with Stella daylilies. But in a previous video tour, I had discussed the Stella D'Oro daylilies and how once they go past their first flush, they look kind of weary and tired and brown, and they're just not very pretty. And I had mentioned that I was going to take all of them and just whack them to the ground. And I did that. And I actually videotaped it, but I ended up, because I was going to do a before and after, and I kind of forgot about the before video, and I accidentally deleted it. I needed more space on my phone, so I kind of can't show you that, but I did. I did actually whack all of these down to about, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches from the ground, and then it got sweltering hot and no rain, and I did not water them. So they sat there really struggling for a couple of weeks, and then as soon as we started getting rain, they started putting out all this new foliage. So they would have probably looked better had I watered them. They would have come out quickly. In past years when I have whacked them back like that, they have come out with a new flush pretty quickly. This year, because of the heat and the drought that came right after I cut them back to the ground, they kind of stunted. They kind of sat there for a while. But as you can see, many of them really look healthy. This one here, I had a really nasty weed, so I'm suffocating that weed out. If you wonder why these random bricks and landscape fabric, sometimes I just, it's really hard to maybe pull up some crabgrass or something, and I just suffocate it. And I don't mind it looking ugly for a little bit. But you can see how lush this new foliage is. And just a few weeks ago, I had whacked it all the way back. Today is July 11th. And I'd have to go back and look at an old video to see when I had mentioned that I was going to cut it back. Because it was shortly after I said that in the video that I did cut them back. And they did look kind of ugly for, you know, a week and a half to 2 weeks. They did. They looked kind of ugly, primarily because it got so dry and hot. But as you can see, and I also pruned back these pink double knockouts right through here, because they had just had a lot of spent blooms. Their first flush was kind of finished, and I thought, well, maybe if I prune both the daylily and the rose, I'll get blooms together. And as you can see, it's happening a little bit. It's certainly not the display I was hoping for, but you can see that that there is some blooms on these with the roses. However, it's not that big a deal to me, because primarily I don't care if it's got the blooms as much as I just didn't want the old dead spent foliage and all those seed pods and brown sticks coming out. And I'll show you what it looks like on the other side of the sidewalk. I deliberately left those so you could kind of see the difference. But this to me just looks like something like a mondo grass. And, you know, it's not ugly to have these little tufts of grass, in my opinion, even if they don't have blooms. So let me go over here and show you. It's driving my husband nuts because he wants to know why I haven't cleaned up this side of the sidewalk. But that's because I want to show you the difference. So here's an example of the daylily that I did not prune back. And I don't know if it will really, if you can see how terrible it really looks. As videos just sometimes hide truth, but look at all this. You see that brown? That's all throughout there. You know, old brown leaves. Just down here, the matting underneath is brown. Hard to mulch in between them because you'll be mulching on top of a lot of the foliage. Now they do have some blooms on them, but to me the blooms do not outweigh the ugliness of the foliage. So had I done the same thing to this side and whacked them all back, you know, they would look like, you know, like these look. Fresh and maybe putting out some new blooms. But again, you can't hardly kill these Stella daylilies. And after 2 years or so, you can go in, you can cut that, separate it, and actually have 2 plants. But I know a lot of people do not care for daylilies. I'm actually one of those people. When I was brand new, we moved into this house not too many years ago. We didn't have anything out here for years. And then we finally got the sidewalk. And then I wanted to decorate the sidewalk. You see these little boxwoods. They're just baby boxwoods. Well, I planted these after. So they've only been here a couple of years, and I really didn't know much about gardening or flowers or anything. I just kind of saw something pretty, and I thought, and I could plant these cheap. If I had used anything else, this would have cost me a fortune, you know, to go all the way down and down the sidewalk. So, you know, I can always take these out and replace them with something, but they look really pretty if you just, like I said, if you just kind of cut them back, and this would have looked a lot better if I'd mulched it good. So, for what it's worth, I just wanted to show you guys, because I know some of you might have thought that cutting back the daylilies all the way back to the ground would have been unsightly. Maybe it would have killed them, but it doesn't. And had I watered these over here right after I cut them, they would have come with new foliage really quickly. But it just got so dry and so hot that they sat there longer in that freshly cut phase. Because as soon as we started getting rain, it was like you could almost watch them grow. They really started growing fast at that point. So anyway, ugly, much better. I appreciate you guys, and just so you know, I do appreciate even the critical comments, because I learn a lot from you guys. I'm not a seasoned gardener. I'm kind of new at this. All my plants are young, and I'm learning as I go. And you know, I may be talking about things that are of no interest to you, but I appreciate the feedback, positive or negative. So thank you guys so much for watching and for your comments, and I hope you have a blessed day. Thanks.